I still use Windows XP in 2025. And before I start talking about how I'm actively opening myself up to getting hacked, I should read the first line of Cybersecurity 101. Does this thing look like it has internet? Now it does. Nah, but seriously, do I really look that stupid? Now, off to the real question. Why? We'll find out after today's sponsor. Just kidding! I'm still a little too small for that. Anyways, let's begin. So, to understand why Windows XP rocks, and still does to this day, even though it has been out of support for close to 11 years now, we'd have to go back in time. Because at this time, Microsoft reigned supreme. And also, the Supreme Court. What happened? Microsoft pulled a Google in the late 90s, specifically 1998. Why? Because like Google now, that's not what I fucking meant. Like Google recently, they've been suspected of being a monopoly. How can you be a board game? Let me quote Wikipedia for a second. The US government accused Microsoft of illegally monopolizing the web browser market for Windows, primarily through the legal and technical restrictions it put on the abilities of PC manufacturers, also known as OEMs, and users to uninstall Internet Explorer. This led the US government to sue. Who works at HR? Now, of course I meant that they were dragged to court, you fucking butt munch. So in 1998...
Hello?
Hey, Bill, what's up?
What's up?
Hey, what's up?
What's up? What's up?
We're getting sued.
Great.
Bill Gates probably thought, if I'm being interrogated, I'm sure as fuck gonna make a show out of it. Because this antitrust case was fucking hilarious.
The subject of this is FW: post-agreement.
Yeah, that's what makes me think this was probably post-agreement.
Who was at this executive staff meeting?
Probably members of the executive staff.
In the middle of this trial, in 2000, Bill Gates,
Chairman of Microsoft,
stepped down after being a CEO for 20 years. So with Bill leaving the gates open, and Steve Ballmer took over. Who is Steve Ballmer? So yeah, in 2000, this man became the CEO of Microsoft worldwide.
Except in Nebraska.
Okay. Anyhow, he became CEO a little before the release of
Windows XP. How much do you want this totally?
Jesus, Steve, chill! When the trial concluded, the initial idea was to separate Microsoft into two different companies. Eventually, barely anything happened. Yes, they had to allow manufacturers to not include Internet Explorer, but most didn't anyway. And some other trivial shit compared to literally splitting this massive company in two. So, when the trial concluded, Steve and Bill probably responded something like this. Let's talk more about Steve here. He coined something that some of you nerds probably know and need to install to get programs to work, which was and still is a safe haven for
Developers.
God damn it, Steve, let me fucking finish! So yeah, my man Steve joined Microsoft in the 80s, became CEO about 20 years later, right around the time my favorite operating system by them ever came out, Windows XP. Windows already came a long way from then and was a revolutionary OS in the sense that it wasn't expensive as Apple was. And still is. And as you might have noticed, Steve was known for his, let's just say, coked up attitude. Kinda like me! Anyways, more about Windows now. In the 90s, Microsoft came up with the revolutionary Start button, which we still use today. Except in 2012. We don't talk about 2012. And Windows XP was way more different than any other consumer version of Windows that became for that. Namely, it was the first consumer version of Windows built on the NT kernel, which we also still use today. This is because Windows consumer versions were previously built on DOS, which after around 20 years became more and more unsafe. And the NT kernel was relatively robust. I mean, it's still fucking Windows, so... However, in 2001, Microcock wasn't as smooth-brained as they are right now. A dedicated Copilot button? Seriously? That's like adding an Internet Explorer or Bing button back in the day. We don't want it! The design language of Windows XP also just feels way less neutered. I myself was used to seeing the classic theme, which was introduced with Windows 95, and hell, I mean, I still skin Windows 11 to look like that, because it just works. No ugly, bland-ass looking designs. Like, come on now. This shit isn't a company presentation. However, if Ballmer would still be CEO, those presentations would have been a hell of a lot funnier. Like, you'd almost forget that this company was practically a monopoly. And a lot of the shit that Windows XP introduced, we take for granted nowadays. Better plug-and-play support. Which means, it works. Because before, you needed to install a million fucking drivers that used 30 different fucking floppy disks because one floppy disk could only hold about one crusty MP3 file that you downloaded from LimeWire. Technically, this got introduced with Windows 98, but...
Load in the appropriate drivers. You'll notice that this scanner build... Whoa.
Yes! Windows XP also made System Restore usable, though it did not introduce it, which Windows ME did. But since that operating system is something that both Microsoft and everybody who used it wants to forget and regrets, Windows XP might as well have coined it. Before then, if you fucked up, you fucked up for good! Multiple user accounts, also with Windows XP. That way, you couldn't write doo-doo fart into your dad's very important tax files, making the IRS show up to break his kneecaps because he was 20 cents off after redoing them. The total user friendliness of Windows XP increased. But that still begs the question. Firstly, I have a huge nostalgia boner for the 2000s. Who could have guessed? Secondly, this was pre-Windows bloating the fuck out of your system with useless bullshit. Actually accepting it whenever you changed settings. Privacy, telemetry. You didn't need a Microsoft account? Even though I literally bypassed that with Windows 11 every fucking time I had the displeasure of infecting my computer with it. You don't need a million gigabytes of RAM just to fucking boot to BIOS. I have actual mid-specs on the computer that I use Windows XP with today's standards, but my god, I have never seen Windows XP run so fucking flawlessly. And since this thing is not liable on the internet anymore, it's a great way to just unplug. You could always just use a proxy to convert web pages to the old school format if your FOMO is that bad. But Jesus fucking Christ, just get off that damn internet! Put that phone down! No, wait, finish the video! Anyways, Windows XP just hits different. Way different than that neutered dog water we have to suffer using today. The actual useful context menu is hidden under the most basic settings. What is this system for? Lobotomites? Well, I added in Sony Vegas 10. Again, what a fucking surprise. And Windows XP is like, built for that? Also, OG Minesweeper. Nah, but for real, I literally record my audio for this very same video with Windows XP, with Audacity. Basically anything creative I do in this video, I make in Windows XP. Proves that I at least find some fucking use in this godly OS. To be fair, probably not. Unless you've regularly used this before, have actual legitimate reasons, aka LARPing as a fucking guy stuck in the naughties, like me, or just have too much time and patience on your hands. Or, if you still burn DVDs and CDs like Papa, XP is still home. Edition. Fuck! Anyhow, most of you fucks probably wouldn't like the Switch very much. Because even though Windows 11 is designed for actual fucking lobotomites, there are quite a few things that Windows XP doesn't have that you'll probably miss. But it's nice to fuck around with if you have no life, like Papa. Yeah, so Windows XP was simply phenomenal for its time. Hence why it was the longest supported version of Windows ever. And even some government agencies use it to this very day. And if you want to know what using computers back in the day was like, be free to check it out.